I also went to high school in the 90s. So this was the era of Miss Saigon. And there was like a stage full of Asian people. And I was like, there's me. Like
Right.
there's a whole cast of like 25 people that all look like me.
Yeah.
How did they're working on Broadway 8 times a week. They get to do this as their job. Like, that was really the first time that it dawned on me that it could be a profession.
Hi everyone, it's time for more Pride Talk. Welcome to our new subscribers. We know your time is valuable. We appreciate you allowing us into your homes, cars, workplaces, or wherever you may be when listening. And for those that may be new to us, Pride Talk is a podcast presented by NAP Pride. Being LGBTQ+ and Asian American, we are a minority within a minority. Our stories tend to get lost or not told at all. With Pride Talk, we're taking up space by featuring in-depth conversations with Asian American LGBTQ+ professionals and our allies. Today, we continue our personal conversation with performer, actor, and super Gaysian Telly Leung. I'm sure you all want to hear more of his inspiring story. I'm your host, John Ong, and with me is my friend and co-host, David Moore. Hi, David.
Hi, John. Well, we're about halfway through this third season and this fantastic conversation with Telly. And thanks to the support of our listeners and NAP leadership, we can bring you this series of insightful, funny, and authentic discussions with folks from our tribe, Asian Americans within the LGBTQ+ community and our allies. So let's get back to Telly and his fascinating story. In this episode, we discuss intersectionality and being both Asian and gay in the theater. And Telly also shares his experience of being an out gay actor and cast as the lead in Disney's Aladdin on Broadway. We also discuss Asian representation in theater and the responsibility of the Asian community to demand and support works created by Asians.
Yeah, and I believe we also touch a bit on the issue of hierarchy, racism, and being othered within the gay community.
You are so right. We did. There was a lot of good conversation in this episode. So get ready for episode 3 of Pride Talk with our special guest, Telly Leung.
But with that added pressure, of having like Asian parents and then being gay, do you feel like that there's been added pressure on you in the professional world, as far as being Asian and gay?
I remember even going to college, going to Carnegie Mellon University, which is a pretty rigorous and prestigious program for acting. I remembered they would never quite say, like, butch it up, right? But they would always say it in a very coded way. They would go, Telly, I need you to approach this role as a young man coming into his manhood and not and to embrace that instead of approaching it as a child. Or they would say things like, this role is more grounded and not as light. And really, and then you would have to process and go, oh right, butch it up. And frankly, like I don't have problems with that because I've played gay characters, I've played straight characters, I've had to convincingly play characters that fall in love with men and women. So I think it is good. It is good. I say this to my actors. I say you can be whoever you want in your life. You can love whoever you want. But if I don't believe that you love that woman on stage, like that's a problem.
Yeah, but do you think that that's because of being perceived as gay or being Asian? Because you know how the Western world likes to feminize Asian men.
Yes, I agree with that. I think there's a little bit of that too. That we are seen as feminine. And now being an acting teacher now, right? Like, first of all, when I went to college, I never had to ask gender pronouns. And we didn't have gender pronouns. You were either one gender or the other. Right? Like even things like that were not as specific. And now there are much more gay characters, and male actors can embrace their femininity more. Female actors can embrace their masculinity more. Like it is something that the business is changing, and what's asked of you is changing, right? It used to be in this business that if you were a man and you came out as gay, you'd never worked again because nobody would believe. They were like, well, he's gay. I can't believe that he's straight. And then there were these incredible actors that like that sort of were coming out as I was entering the business too, that made their way and sort of opened the doors for everybody. I mean, first of all, George Takei coming out opened the doors for a lot of people. People like B.D. Wong coming out opened the doors for a lot of people. Ellen DeGeneres coming out. Neil Patrick Harris opened the door for a lot of people because here he was, this out gay actor playing this womanizing character on a CBS sitcom, you know, and you bought it because he was a good actor.
Yeah.
Right.
And it wasn't about who he married and decided to have a family with. That wasn't what it was about. It was about his work as an actor. And so it did shift in time for me to feel comfortable being out and being an actor. That they didn't care anymore, you know? I will say that I had reservations, you know, when I was doing Aladdin, for sure. Here I was working for a big quote unquote family company. I was very much out, you know, doing Allegiance. All the Broadway shows I'd done before that, I was out, right? Allegiance, I was out. In Transit, I played a gay character. I was married to Justin Guarini in the show. And so I was out in that show, you know, on stage and off in that. I was playing a gay character. So by the time I was doing Aladdin, I said, oh gosh, like I was doing a lot of publicity as Aladdin. And I was really curious as to how much Disney was going to be okay having an out and gay Asian actor play a leading man for them, who is going to have to fall in love with a princess night after night, right? And so, and I have to say, Disney, you know, I joined the company in June of 2017, and one of the first events that they asked me to do was they asked me to host their Pride event.
Oh,
actually,
Oh, wow.
it was at the New Amsterdam Theater. It was right before a matinee. It was to host all of the Disney employees for a rally that we did, a Disney rally before we sent all the Disney employees to go march in the Pride Parade in New York City. And I was going to be one of the hosts of that whole event.
wow.
And they had said to me, please bring your husband, you know? And so that gave me such I was just able to exhale and go, oh, great. Like, you know, a company like Disney, which you think, you know, they have people who buy their products and go see their shows who might not agree with my lifestyle or who I love, but they go, we don't care. To them, family means there are many definitions of family to them.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I'm very thankful that I worked for a company that was that accepting and that inclusive.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
Well, do you think as you were growing up, did you feel different being Asian? And do you think that may have helped in your journey into coming out as a gay man?
Yeah, I grew up in Bay Ridge, Brooklyn, which right now, if you were to go to Bay Ridge, there's a lot of Chinese people. But when I was growing up there, it was mostly Italians and Irish people. It was mostly there was like a pizzeria on every block and an Irish pub on every block. Do you know what I mean? And like, I would say maybe a sixth of your class was Asian, you know? So you know, that sort of just was how it was. And so, you know, I definitely felt in the minority as a kid. I also felt like my parents being immigrant parents, you know, it was also very much ingrained in me, the idea of race. Even as a little kid, I remember my dad saying to me, you know, you are a minority, you know, and in a lot of ways, you're going to have to work. People are going to, before they even see you or know how smart you are or know if you're talented or not, they're going to judge you by the color of your skin. So when you do something, just know that you might have to work a little harder and that it's not fair. But the world isn't fair. And I think I was taught that very young, at a very young age. And I think my dad, having come from, you know, if you think about it, coming from China where it's very homogenous, where everybody is the same skin color, then you immigrate to a place like New York and it's so diverse, and you come to a place like America, which has so much baggage about race. And like, all of a sudden it was like a crash course in like racism, what it means to be, you know, to experience prejudice, because in China where everybody looks like you, there is no prejudice. You know what I mean? You're judged on different things. Maybe people are classist or whatever, but like it's not based on skin. It's not based on that. And so as a little kid, I felt like my parents, you know, with care and with love, cautioned me that was going to be my sort of those are the cards that I was dealt as a human on this planet, as a Chinese American, as a minority, as a person of color, you know.
Do you think it's different, for being an Asian LGBT person, how that would be different than a non-Asian, or do you think there is a difference?
Yeah, I think there is, it's interesting. There is the racism that happens in the macro of the world of America when it comes to being Asian, right? There are things, there are prejudiced ideas against Asian people. I mean, especially now with this crazy coronavirus and, and the administration calling it a Chinese virus and all of that, which is ridiculous. It's sort of I'm hyper aware of that, of sort of what the majority of Americans think of us, right, who are Asian American in this country, and what they think of us before they even get to know us, just by looking at our skin color, what they think of us, and then there is that. Then you look at the micro, and then you look at the racism within the gay community for us as well.
Yeah.
Then there are the preconceptions of what gay Asian people are like. So not only do we sort of receive these prejudiced ideas from the world from our country at large and the world at large, but then to receive it inside our own community about us being submissive or us being, there's all of these things that are us being not masculine. You would think that within our community we would not experience that because we're all othered. We're all being othered usually, but like there's even that that racism and prejudice within our community. So I do think it is different for us. I feel like there is an extra hurdle we do jump through. I have a lot of diverse friends in New York City, but I definitely have a core group in New York City of my Gaysian friends. And we are able to sit together and bond over some of these things that we all go through, that common experience. And that is one of those things that when we get together, that I find comfort in being with them and knowing that we're all going through the same thing. I call it a double hurdle. It's like, it's sort of like, not only are you gay, but you're also, I hate to say it, in the gay community, there is a hierarchy of who is viewed as the alphas of our community, who are the, what did they used to have that term, like, you're like the A gays, right? Or whatever it is, like you're the gays of the community that wield a certain amount of power. And usually they don't look like us. Right? Like that's the thing. We're not thought of in that way in our community.
And that's really why Nat Pride came about. People would ask us, well, why do we need Nat Pride? We have all these other organizations. And we're like, but we as Asian, LGBT folks, we have that added burden and nobody's addressing that.
It's just an extra. Again, it really comes down to what my dad, I don't think my dad knew I was gay when I was a little kid. I don't think I knew I was gay when I was a little kid, but my dad having that conversation with me saying, Telly, you might have to work a little harder than everybody else. Like when you go to a job interview, you might have to really convince people that to give this job to an Asian person, because it might not be what they're thinking at first. It's not, they might not be prejudiced, but it's not like they might not be thinking that it's possible to hire somebody like you. And I've certainly found that lesson to be valuable to me as an actor. I get cast non-traditionally, all the time. But I think part of that is that I have to walk into a room oftentimes and go, hey guys, I know you need an actor for this role. In 5 minutes of this audition, let me prove to you that you can hire me for this. And in a way, I have to walk in and really kill it and really sell it to them and really give them no reason to not hire me. And let me like do such a great job that you undeniably have to give me the job, right? Yeah. Like that you undeniably have to count me as a viable option for this role. It is a little bit extra on my part. I do feel that,
Being able to communicate with other Gaysians, what is the value that we get from that relationship?
My group of Gaysian friends in New York City, like a lot of us have come from traditional parents, either, traditional Chinese parents, Korean parents, Thai parents, Japanese parents, whatever that is, that come from a strong sense of family and what the definition of family, the sense of duty to family, that is very characteristic of a lot of traditional Asian cultures. I feel like we've all come out of that, and a sense of and also had the same have had many of the same sort of coming out experiences. And so I feel like we're bonded by that, and also the sense of the sense of dealing with, you know, a lot of the shame of that too, right? Like we're taught to be ashamed of it in a lot of these cultures. And so how to get over that, right? I feel like meeting other people that are like me has actually helped my own journey of feeling not so ashamed.
Yeah.
When I meet other Gaysian people that I feel like, oh, you went through the same thing. I'm not alone. It's not just me. I'm not the only one that let down my family. You did too. Like, and you're okay. Like, you're a good human being. Like, you're not a bad person at all. You know, like
You have to come out to your parents, and you have to come out to the whole community.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
I mean, you just feel not so alone, and there is a shared experience that I feel bonded to them by, you know. So and also the shared experience of just being gay in a New York City. Like I said, you know, there is a when it comes to Asian people, whatever that is, you know. I mean, it's that thing we talk about when you're on a dating app, and you know, you would never ever say no fats, no femmes, no blacks, no Asians to somebody's face, and yet you can say it in a dating app.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it's ridiculous, you know.
Right.
And like and having that sort of prejudice and racism like within the community, and dealing with that within the community, you know, being written off because of your skin color, and fighting that perception, you know, helps when you have numbers, you know. Fighting that perception helps when you can form a bit of community and a bit of brotherhood within that Gaysian community, to go, you know what, we are a force, and we are a voice to be heard. You know, we're a force to be reckoned with. So I've found a lot of great friendships.
Have you always wanted to be a performer, or when was the moment you're like, I want to be a performer?
Yeah, as a professional, I mean, I don't know. It was always something that I loved as a hobby. And again, because my parents had ingrained in me that I should go to an Ivy League school and make something of my life, you know, that I didn't think it was a viable career option. It wasn't until high school that I really got into theater, and I actually booked my first like professional job. I was doing these promo spots for what used to be, now it's called the CW network, but it used to be the WB network in New York City. And I was doing promo spots, and I had to join a union. I joined AFTRA, you know, at the time. I got paid residuals and royalties, and it was I got health insurance, you know, like all of those things that and my parents were like, wait, so you just went on an audition and you got this job as a 17-year-old, you know, as an 18-year-old? And I was like, yeah, I did. I just got this job and I'm in a union now, you know? And like, and getting checks all the time. I was like, oh, I can make money doing this. It really wasn't something that I realized was a viable option. And then I remember, like, you know, I also went to high school in the 90s. So this was the era of Miss Saigon. And there was like a stage full of Asian people. And I was like, there's me. Like there's like there's a whole cast of like 25 people that all look like me.
Yeah.
How did they're working on Broadway 8 times a week. They get to do this as their job. Like, you know, that was really the first time that it dawned on me that it could be a profession.
Yeah. Representation is so important.
It is. It really is. It's like seeing of it is what, you know, like Lea Salonga winning a Tony Award, you know, and watching that on the Tonys. I was like, oh my gosh, like she won a Tony as best leading actress. She's a lead actress.
Yeah.
You know, like that's a huge deal for somebody like me who was, you know, 11 at the time when she won, you know, like seeing that on TV was a big deal.
Yeah, it was such a big deal. I remember when I first saw Miss Saigon, and it was like, because my mom, you know, comes out of the Vietnam War. She didn't talk too much about the war.
Yeah.
So for me to experience Miss Saigon was to kind of see it through her eyes and see some of the sacrifices that she made in leaving her family to bring me over here so I would have a better life. You know, that part never really hit me until I saw, you know, Miss Saigon. And I know there's always been controversy with Miss Saigon in the Asian community and things like that. But for me, it helped me connect with my mom at such a deeper level because I understood the sacrifice. But, you know, getting back to this thing about representation, I remember I got to see you in Allegiance on Broadway. And at that time, there was Allegiance. There was The King and I was playing, you know, with an mostly Asian cast. Philippa Sue was in Hamilton.
Yes.
And then Miss Saigon was getting ready to, do the revival. So I was like, it just made me so proud to be walking, in New York, knowing all this representation was happening all at one time for our community.
All at one time.
Yeah, it was just an amazing feeling, So, what does that do for you, knowing that you're a part of this story of representation?
It's phenomenal. Then what happened was Allegiance closed and King and I closed, and the representation sort of ended. So in a lot of ways, I can't help but did the showbiz world go, okay, done, check. We had our year where there were 3 Asian shows running on Broadway. We're good. Did the powers that be in our crazy business go, we checked the quota and we're done, because there was a dearth of work after that. There were no other Asian shows. And you better believe that for all of us in Allegiance who were doing a brand new musical, there was this pressure, a huge amount of pressure, for us to go, this has to be good. If this is not good, there won't be another original Asian musical for a really long time if this is not good.
Right.
And so again, it's that same idea of my dad going, you might have to work a little harder than everybody else. We had that notion for sure. Listen, Allegiance didn't run very long on Broadway, but I am very thankful that it's been filmed as a movie, and I still get people who say they've seen the Cinecast, the movie, and that that's available to them. They show it every December, every year in December they show it, right around Pearl Harbor Day.
I think here in Kansas City we've taken a group twice to see it. In
thank
the
you,
theaters.
thank you for doing that. But I'm happy that story sort of lives on in that way. Thank God for technology that it does live on that way. But it was definitely a good. It was a good time.
Yeah.
But then the years after that, there weren't that kind of opportunity.
We've made progress, but work still needs to be done.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It can't just be okay. We did it.
Yeah. And I think some of that lies on our own community too. That's one thing that we try to get out here in Kansas City, is that when there is a show that is, casting Asian American actors or is telling a story about our community, we need to show up and support that show.
You need to go and you need to spend
because money talks.
You need to buy a ticket.
Yes.
There are times that I get, as somebody who's in the industry, I get offered tickets. And when it's something like that where I go, no, I thank you for the free ticket. I'm going to buy a ticket, because if I don't buy a ticket, art like this, stories like this don't exist. So I'm going to buy a ticket because I'm voting with my dollars that I want to see more of this. And at the end of the day, the powers that be are the producers. They are looking at the till at the end of the day and seeing how much money has come in for a particular show and whether or not it's profitable. And I think it is upon our community to go, okay, we got to show up. And I will say with Allegiance, we increased the Asian audience, Asian theater going audience by a lot with Allegiance. Between George Takei and Lea Salonga bringing all the Filipinos, it was awesome. They all we really did increase the amount of Asian people that went to the theater. But then again, it can't just be that as well.
I like to think that the impact, we may not have seen the impact yet, because the young Telly Leung who was inspired by Miss Saigon, that you probably have inspired the next generation, and it's going to take a few years for them to come up, right?
Yeah, I hope so. I really hope so. And I think there's some really exciting, this season in particular, and I'm really sad that COVID-19 has sort of shortchanged so many runs right now. People were right in the middle of their run and then getting cut off, or Broadway shows that are not going to open anymore. But there were 2 really exciting pieces of theater written by Asian women that were running, that had their runs cut short. One was Celine Song was doing a play at the New York Theater Workshop. It was called Endlings. It was incredible, about these female Korean divers who were elderly Korean divers off the islands of Korea that were of an ancient breed of a community of female divers. No tanks, no anything. They were free divers that would dive. And then there was a great play by Lauren Yee called Cambodian Rock Band, which was at the Theater, which was such a great play and so great, and again, COVID-19, cut those runs short, but such exciting theater. So it is happening, and it is and there are those new voices coming out, and we just have to show up. Our community has to show up and bring friends.
Right.
we have to bring allies and bring friends and bring people to support it and to help us spread the word of mouth that, you know, we want to see more of these stories.
Did you ever feel like being Asian had been an obstacle for you as an actor?
Oh yeah. I see it as both, right? Like I see it as an obstacle when I look at the amount of opportunities and available roles that are out there, like especially when it comes to just more traditional musical theater where there just isn't a lot of work that's specifically for me, right? So unless I'm going to be non-traditionally cast in something or somebody's, you know, or maybe it's a role where race doesn't matter, like, you know, maybe that's sort of when I feel like it's not a hindrance, right? But I see it as both. I see it as something that's an obstacle, and I see it as an asset for me. I mean, it is who I am and how I grew up, and my race and my background, my tradition, my heritage. All of those things are also an asset to me as well. You know, and in a lot of ways, I view, because show business is not easy for people of color and really not easy for people that look like us, people that are Asian. It's also made my skin tougher. And in a lot of ways, I feel like it's made me work a little harder, and it's made me, you know, it's made me stronger in a lot of ways and made me a better artist. So I don't know. I think it's both. I really do think it's both.
Which was it harder, more of an obstacle, being Asian or gay?
Oh, in show business?
In show business, yeah. Your
show business, I think with show business, it's being Asian for sure. I don't care what you say. You know, we do not live in a post-racial society. Like, we live in a very racial society.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the last 4 years of Trump hasn't shown us that. You know what I mean? It's like we live in a very racially conscious society, and so, you know, I can't help the way I look, and I can't change my skin color. And there are people in our country, in our world, that will make judgments and box me purely based on the way I look. You know, at no job interview or audition will they ever wonder who I sleep with, you know? So like when it comes to show business, race is a bigger obstacle. But then again, like I said, my race and the things that I've had to deal with because of my race, because it has been an obstacle sometimes, has also made me better.
Yeah. Now, you have a somewhat of a non-traditional job, and you were talking about how Disney was so embracing of your being gay, inviting your husband and all that. What do you think? What's your thought about being out at work and your profession and outside of that, just working?
Yeah, well, with my profession, listen, so much of the theater community is inclusive and is gay that it doesn't necessarily. I don't necessarily feel like it's a problem or an issue. I don't have a ton of experience in the corporate work world. I would hope that it wouldn't be an issue for most corporations, what your family looks like. And
I just think that the feeling that you felt with Disney when you were in Aladdin.
It's corporate. I mean, Disney, it's a big corporation.
I think that's the closest to what people are feeling.
Yes.
Yeah.
And on Broadway, in show business, it doesn't get more corporate than Disney. But I also think what I've learned is that I had a preconception of what I thought they were going to be, what they, you know what I mean? Because I know, you know, there are people who are very conservative who don't agree with an LGBTQ lifestyle, that buy Disney products and go to Disney theme parks and go see Disney movies and you know, and have daughters who sing Frozen. You know what I mean? Like, I get it. Like, so I wasn't sure if that corporation, but I think at the end of the day, with a company like Disney, what I really learned is there are also companies that go, that's not our culture is to be inclusive. So, you know, that's just who we are. And so for me, like I felt very lucky that that's who I was working for, you know. Listen, we all know those corporations that are not, right? Like, you know, like Chick-fil-A, big corporation, like not inclusive. Do you know what I mean? So like, I'm not eating the hate chicken. I'm not going to do it.
Yeah. And I think it also has to do with the fact that the demographics in the United States is changing. We are becoming, you know, more of a minority majority. So especially in the entertainment world, you have to represent that. You know, if you want those dollars from those communities, you're going to have to show representation.
Of course.
So I think that's really been helping. It's all about money, like we talked about. You know, it's like butts in seats. So if you want these communities to come and buy movie tickets or theater tickets, you better represent them, and represent them authentically, because we're tired of being represented by Caucasian folks,
or
playing us or telling our stories.
Yeah. And I think that authenticity is important. I think we're hungry for that authenticity too. Like, I'm interested in what it really is. You know what I mean? Like, I like to think of it as like when I have friends who visit New York, they're like, Telly, don't take us to Panda Express. Take us to that hole in the wall in Chinatown.
You're right.
That, like, where like you eat. Do you know what I mean? Like, people are like hungry for that. Everybody wants that. Everybody wants that authentic experience at the end of the day. And that there's dollars to be had when you can really embrace that authentic experience too, because people want it.
Yeah, and everybody can find something in that. You don't have to be Asian to find the heart of
Absolutely.
allegiance. That story talks about family. Anybody, if they could get past any preconceived ideas, they should just connect with the story about family. We, for years, have been asked to connect with other stories that aren't about us. So it's time for us to say, you can experience something and connect with our stories too.
I think when people do, they will realize that, it doesn't matter. But before they buy tickets to go see it, it's like, I don't know if I can connect with that Japanese guy. The people would think so until they go see it, and then they're like, it doesn't matter, Parasites.
I mean, Parasite is a brilliant example, because halfway it was so riveting that I forgot I was listening to Korean and reading subtitles. I mean, that's how good it was.
Yeah.
Like, I just forgot, right?
Yeah.
I was like, this could happen anywhere. I know it's happening in Korea, but it could happen anywhere.
We just continue to work harder, and then we will change all the
We
lines.
will. Yeah. We just have to. Honestly, I say this to young Asian actors all the time who ask me, they're like, is it hard being Asian? I go, it is. I said, but if it's going to stop you from showing up, then this isn't what you should be doing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, you just have to keep showing up. You might have to show up more often. There's more pressure on you to kill it when you do show up.
Yeah.
But you just have to show up. And if you show up and you're good, you're undeniably good, somebody is going to recognize that. And that goes for every field, really. That's just not the entertainment. I mean, the entertainment field, we're visible, and you can see us and you can hear us, and we do something for visibility. But in every, I think that also applies to my friends in the corporate world too. If you show up and you're always killing it, people at the end of the day are not going to care what you look like, because you're the person that gets the job done. It's my mom. It's it's that fashion world going. Call Judy. It's 12 hours until the fashion show, and Isaac Mizrahi's like, call Judy. She's like, call Judy. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's that.
That's right, folks. It's time for our community to show up, and more importantly, show out for Asian storytellers, especially our queer Asian artists. Let us know how you support work created by and performed by Asians.
Yes, please share your comments about our latest conversation with Telly. Just email us at pridetalk@nap.org or call us and leave a voice comment. Our number is 4197-PRIDE5. And of course, you can find all this information on the show notes and on our website, pride.nap.org.
And just a quick shout out to NAP, the National Association of Asian American Professionals, which is a nonprofit organization that cultivates and empowers Asian and Pacific Islander leaders through leadership development, professional networking, and community service. Check them out at nap.org.
Please join us for our next episode, where we will be closing out our season with Telly as we discuss diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging in the theater, and the need for new voices and authentic stories. Be sure to subscribe to the Pride Talk podcast so that you don't miss out as we continue the conversation with the amazing Telly Leung. Until then, remember this: representation matters, so be seen, be heard, be loud, and be proud. The opinions expressed on Pride Talk are solely those of the hosts and guests and do not represent the views or opinions of our individual employers, NAP, or our sponsors.